When thinking of research, how to develop it, and where to begin, I often use the idea of a research triangle. A research triangle has three elements: a broad base, a narrow tip, and the middle. Each of these 3 points reflect 3 stages of research. Where you begin your research for a topic will, in many respects, depend upon how much you already know about a topic. For example, I am interested in doing some research on Proverbs 1:7, which says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction." How does this fit into my research triangle? This is already a pretty narrow topic, but it is not a research question. The research question is what is at the tip of the triangle. For most research projects that are being developed, a specific research question is needed. If I left the topic as Proverbs 1:7, there are numerous topics that I could write about. Without a narrower focus, I will be writing a brief synthesis of scholarly thinking about Proverbs 1:7, and I'll be really unable to dig much into it. For example, I could write about what does the author of Proverbs mean by the fear of the Lord, or how do other Old Testament authors define the fear of the Lord? Why does the concept of the fear of the Lord appear in the Old Testament but does not seem to be present in the New Testament? Is there a New Testament equivalent? How should one understand this concept today? Another question could be, what does the author of Proverbs mean by beginning of knowledge? How does this fit into the context of Proverbs chapter 1? And also, how is the concept of the fear of the Lord used in other wisdom literature? Are there other ways in the book of Proverbs that the authors define fools? As you may be seeing, there are a lot of questions, and they're good questions at that stem simply from one verse. It'd be difficult to write a good paper and cover all of these topics well. This is why we need to think narrower. Before we do this, however, let's go down the triangle. For many topics you may be interested in pursuing, you may already know a lot about it. However, for others, this may not be the case. The bottom of this triangle is for background knowledge, or what I often call pre-search. For example, for my interest in Proverbs 1:7, I would need to know the following in order to really do good research on my topic. While context is critical in understanding most biblical passage, Proverbs is really an exception to that. However, Proverbs 1:7 is a kind of prelude to the book of Proverbs. So, while I will need to look at context, but on the other hand, it is not as critical as it might be in understanding one of the Gospels per se. Proverbs is also part of what is called wisdom literature in the Old Testament. Because of this, it might be helpful to see how this idea appears in other wisdom literature. To really understand my background knowledge better, a reference to like a commentary introduction or the Dictionary of the Old Testament, Wisdom, Poetry, and Writings would be very helpful. This is what I call pre-search. If you are digging around in a new topic, these kinds of resources are very helpful. Honestly, even a Wikipedia article at this point can be helpful. In this case, the Wikipedia article really doesn't have much to say on the fear of God, but one of the external links looks intriguing, and it provides some intriguing background on the topic. Now that we know our topic a bit, we can come back to Proverbs 1:7. But we are in the middle now. We really need to develop our topic a bit further before we can develop a research question. This again really depends on how much you know about your topic. The point of this part of your research is to develop these again. The purpose is not necessarily to answer all these questions, but to be able to find out more about your topic so that you can generate these kinds of questions. Again, you may know your topic well enough to be familiar with the many debates taking place. However, if you are not, books oftentimes work as a great venue to discover what is being discussed. Once you have developed the knowledge of your topic well enough so that you know the discussions taking place regarding it, and you have all your pre-search behind you, now is the time to develop your research questions. Many of the questions we discovered in our pre-search would make great research topics. However, we still need to take an extra step. Let's say I am particularly interested in discovering if there is a New Testament equivalent to the Old Testament concept of fearing the Lord. My research question would look something like this: is there a New Testament equivalent to the Old Testament concept of fearing the Lord? I would need to dig a bit further, however, to discover my thesis, or in other words, the answer to my research question. As I have done a bit of digging, I discovered that a popular New Testament interpretation of this Old Testament idea is following Christ. So my thesis is, the New Testament equivalent to the Old Testament idea of fearing God is following Christ. Once I have this idea down, articles are a great place to begin digging. Unlike the reference works we talked about earlier, articles tend to cover a very narrow perspective of a topic. If I go looking for articles and I have a broad topic, I'll be fishing through thousands of articles. It is best to utilize articles when your topic is narrow. This presentation has talked a bit about the research triangle, when to utilize what kinds of resources in your research endeavors. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you.